So I'm just going to test for audios. There we go. Hello, My TV. My name is Alethea. I'm your host as usual. Today I'm here with Trevor Doyle, who is a director and producer. And we're going to talk about some of his projects, his upbringing, and what's led him to these new projects that he has coming out. And I want to start with asking you how you are and sort of where you're coming from right now.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
I'm doing great, and I mean, you mean where I came from?
Yeah, like are you LA based right now?
Yeah, I'm LA based. I do a lot of films in Central Asia, but I also work in Europe and North America as well.
Yeah, I think it's important because you weren't here initially when you started your filmmaking journey. You got a lot of ideas from elsewhere, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So can we start with sort of where you grew up and then where that took you in terms of life and
Sure.
what made you want to come back?
So I grew up in Southern California, mostly in North Hollywood. Both my parents were actors, and I grew up in the industry and wanted nothing to do with it. I was completely disinterested. I basically joined the Army when I got out of high school. So I joined the Army, and when I got out of the Army, I went to study in Finland. And I did my basic studies in Finland, cultural anthropology, archaeology, and then I became an archaeologist for the National Museum.
That's really incredible. You were telling me something interesting about can you tell me a little bit about that Pearl story? That was really interesting to me.
Oh yeah. So the last dig that I was on before I came back to Los Angeles to work in film, I was working for the National Board of Antiquities, and we had new people on a dig. And there was this young woman on the dig, and it's really typical when people just graduate and they work on a dig, they think everything in front of them is something important. And she kept telling me that, she found a ship. And I thought it was the most absurd thing I'd ever heard in my life. I'm like, come on, there's not a ship. And she did it time after time. And finally she's like, I got something. I looked, and there's this little tiny white bulb. And I was like, I should probably take a picture. So I took a picture of it, and I sent it to the dig leader who was in charge of all the region, and the dig leader was like, stop what you're doing, called me immediately and said, that's a Viking pearl. And I was like, I didn't even know what a Viking pearl was. And then I crawled up on a truck, and I stood over and I looked at the whole dig site, and I realized that she was absolutely right. She had unearthed a ship that had been completely dismantled.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that you're an archaeologist, because I think it's played into some of your later projects, right? So I want to talk about sort of you joined the military, right? And then you got to a cool job as well where you were like with the deer and things like that.
Oh yeah. So when I got out of the military, and I was working, there was a brief period where my girlfriend at the time, she was Sami. They're the native reindeer herding people in the circumpolar north. And both of her parents fell ill. Her dad broke both of his shoulders. Mom had really serious arthritis, and they were going to lose their herd of reindeer. So I went up to the Norwegian border of Finland, and I got certified as a reindeer herder. And I spent a year basically going back and forth with the herd. And while I was doing that, I met these World War II veterans. They're called Winter War veterans in Finland. And they didn't usually have people they could talk to, but because I was a Gulf War veteran, they felt kind of comfortable talking to me, and also because I was a foreigner, they knew I wasn't going to be talking to other people, so they told me stuff that they wouldn't normally tell other people. But they kept referring to this woman, saying, how she'd saved the villages. And after a while, I was like, well, was she a soldier? And they reacted like, what are you talking about? That's absurd. No, she was a postmaster. And I was like, well, that doesn't help me a whole lot with this. And so then they told me that what she had done, so she delivered the mail to all the different villages, and at the time all of the children and the teenagers were in charge of the farms, because the mothers had gone to be with the Lotas, and the Lotas were these anti-aircraft artillery women, and they were firing when the Russians would come across. They would fire at them. And then the men had gone to fight on the border. So there were no adults around. And at this particular time, there were Nazis in Finland, in the north, who were supposedly going to defend Finland against a Russian invasion. When the Russians saw it, they basically warned Finland, if you don't get them out, we're gonna invade. So she knew something bad was gonna happen, and she, because nobody noticed her, because she was just the postmaster, she was able to go to all the children in the village, and she talked to the teenagers that she trusted the most and said, one night I'm going to come, and when I do, you need to be ready. Everything's gotta be packed, because we're gonna go somewhere. And she picked the night, and just as it would, not only did she pick the right night, but the very next day, the Nazis were kicked out and they burned Lapland to the ground. So all of the villages, everything was burned to the ground. There was nothing left. And when the parents came back, they thought that their children were dead and their livestock were gone. And a year later, Eiley came back with the children, like the Pied Piper and all of the livestock, and they were able to rebuild all the villages. And I was like, I can't not have this story be told. So I went down south and I spoke to a film board, and they gave me a camera, and I went back up and I did a research documentary about it. And when I was done, I was like, I think I like telling these kinds of stories better than doing the archaeology.
Yeah, that's incredible. Coming from, you said both your parents were actors, right?
Yeah.
And you didn't want anything to do with film?
Nothing to do with it.
So what gave you the courage to really, because getting a film funded is very difficult, right? Especially as a new filmmaker. But you said you just did it with one camera, right?
I just did it with one camera. I didn't have funding really. I had a camera.
Yeah. And as for the structure of it, did you know what you wanted? Did you do just interview based?
I mean, it was interview based. I really didn't know exactly what I was. It was one of those things where I would interview people, and as the story unfolded before me, I got a better idea of what I wanted to do as it was going. And I realized that. I realized, because I figured archaeology is such a completely different field, but then I started to understand that what I was doing as an archaeologist was I was uncovering artifacts, and then I was kind of reverse engineering a story based on what I had uncovered. So it actually wasn't such a different discipline, and I think it actually helped prepare me for what I ended up going on to do.
Did you get to meet her?
Oh yeah, I got to meet Eiley. She was totally amazing. She was this itsy bitsy little lady, like a 7-pound woman, who used to carry a 6-gun in her waistband. She said, for Russians and bears. And she used to carry her body weight in mail when she did the deliveries, which is also, you know, and in the winter she had to do it in the snow, so she would ski. So yeah, she was a really amazing lady, really brave, and of course, every village basically up in Lapland is there because of her.
Yeah.
So
they all know her name and everything.
oh, everybody knows Eiley.
Big piece of
Yeah.
That's incredible. Do you know, are you the first person to do a documentary on her?
Oh yeah, nobody had done. What I would really love to do now, now that I've got years under my belt, I would like to go back. So some of the children and teenagers right before they left, you know, in Lapland, in that place, they have 24 hours of sunlight in the midsummer. And they usually have a dance. And they had a dance, and there were some love affairs that happened, and you know, there were some fights and arguments as kids have. And there's still some of those kids alive. And what I would love to do is I'd like to go back, do more of a feature documentary using some of the original footage I had, and then I would like to take all of those people in a bus back over to Sweden, to the village that they've never been to since the war, and have a midsummer dance with everyone again.
That's incredible.
That would be my...
And this all started because you got that job as a deer herder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, so you do this documentary, and then do you come to LA right after?
Yeah, I came to LA right after. I worked, so the first thing I did when I came back is I worked in a special effects studio, and I was making parts basically for films. Like I made all the lower receivers for the blaster rifles and the Star Trek Redux, and then I worked on this big project for this guy Jim Key, and we actually made basically all of the 6-foot replicas of the Battlestar Galactica ships that are in the museums around the U.S. I made all the parts for them. I didn't build them, but I actually made the parts for them.
Do you find a correlation between archaeology and what you were doing on these projects with these ships?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because once you get stuff, once you actually find things as an archaeologist, you have to conserve it. And when you're conserving it, you know you've got to clean it, and you've got to mark what it is. And a big part of building those ships was we had to actually go online and look for models that have been built, because the original Battlestar Galactica ships were all built from World War I and World War II machines. So they were actually from models, and the parts were no longer around. So we had to go online, find people that had old model builds, buy the model builds, then make new molds. So it actually, there was a lot of correlation
Yeah.
between the two.
Attention to detail too.
And I actually, what I did, when we finished shooting them, or we call it shooting when it's a two-part mold, when we finished making the parts and the ships were built by the artists that were doing them, they brought a cameraman in to do an old-fashioned run of the ship so that it looked like, you know, it was flying in space. And I helped the cameraman, and when we were done, the cameraman was like, "You should be doing this. You're good at this." And that's when I stepped into doing DP work.
From there, when does your new project come in that's your own?
Oh, so, well, I mean, I had some projects after that, but the real beginning of producing in my company was a film. It was a film called The Steed, and we really kind of started on The Steed around 2015. It took many years to make. We had to get foals to train to be in it. It's about a boy and a horse in Mongolia, and if you know horses, you know that although they're really amazing creatures, they don't always want to do exactly what you tell them to do. So if you want a horse that can do everything, what you really should do is you should train 4 horses, you know, and you pick each horse that has the right personality and the right traits to be all the different people. So that's what we did, is we got actually 4 foals, and we had a horse master who trained them, and that took 2 years, and then it took 3 years to shoot the whole thing. We shot in the Gobi Desert, we shot in the plains, we shot in the Mongolian highlands. We had 3,000 horses on set, 50 camels, around 3,000 sheep and goats, 300 extras. I mean, it was a massive undertaking. And it was really a privilege and an honor to be able to shoot with the people that we shot with. And we had famous Russian actors, famous Kazakh actors, famous Mongolian actors, and they're all, I mean, I've grown to truly appreciate the acting talent that's in Central Asia. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun to shoot, and our director, he's originally a nomad. His name's Erden Billy Ganbold. But that's another reason why we were able to do what we were able to do, because anywhere we went, the nomads knew who he was, and if we needed help, we needed anything, they were there.
Yeah. As to the beginning of this story, what made you want to tell the story? Because there's stigma around the Mongols and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I like to make films that really explain a culture, and I think one of the things that's really beautiful about traveling and learning about new cultures and new people is it's like what makes us different is usually what I think is the most special. And usually what you find out is the things that we see as being different are actually a doorway into the fact that we're all the same. And so, like, usually when you see movies about Mongolians, it's about conquering and swords and killing, and that's not really Mongolian culture. That is part of what happened with a particular empire that was Mongolian. And you know, it's like what really appealed to me about the story was that it was about Mongolian culture. It was about how they view their relationship with the land, their relationship with animals, and also how they love each other, and how close they are as family. And like one of the things that we highlighted in the film, and it's like when I see it, it still gives me goosebumps. You know, Mongolians are not as demonstrative, I would say, as like we would think, especially with children.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this one thing that they do, and I was like, when I saw it, I was like, okay, this has got to be in the film like multiple times because it's so. But when there's somebody younger than you that you love and care about, you don't really hug them, but they come up to you and they kind of bow their head, and then you cup the back of their head and bring it under your nose, and you just kind of, it's like you're inhaling them, and it initially looks like you're like, what's going on? But you really start to see how much it's a proof of the love and compassion that they have for one another, and it's really special.
Oh, it's like their form of an embrace.
Yeah.
Some sort of. Oh,
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
And I feel like it's one of those things that you look at it and at first it looks very foreign,
Yeah.
but then you really start to understand. Well, I mean, this is the same thing as just like a hug and a kiss or something like that. It's really, and that's the kind of stuff that we really look for when we're making films.
Yeah.
We want to connect people culturally in a way that maybe it looks different, but you really feel it and understand it when you see it.
Oh, that's cool. So you wanted to put it in there multiple times
Yeah.
because it's very common.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's really incredible. Okay, so as to that project, you really tell stories about sort of it connected sort of to your background in your studies, right?
Yeah.
Because you're a cultural anthropologist. So moving forward, have you done more of that in your future works? Do you believe in telling stories about other cultures?
Oh yeah, we've definitely. I mean, I also made Finland's first superhero movie, and there's a lot of Finnish culture inside of that. Finns are they're very funny people because they're very quiet, but they can also be really out there. They can do a lot of crazy stuff, and I feel like with that movie in particular, people really got to get an idea of what Finns could be like, and it was interesting to make something, you know, because a lot of times when you try and make a film that connects with people culturally, you're trying to do it with something that's more historical, because you're kind of taking a look back, and like this was fun because it was a modern film and it was talking about modern culture, and we used a lot of humor inside of it, and that humor, I think that humor is one of the things that gets people interested in watching it, because it's like, even though it's a superhero movie and there's people getting punched and stuff like that, there's just this odd sort of, they're very self-deprecating in their humor. So
Yeah. What was the superpower that this superhero has?
So his superpower was he was exposed to a chemical that essentially made him impervious. A little bit like Superman, except that he wasn't strong.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, I guess maybe less impervious and more like a revenant. Like you could shoot him and hurt him, but he'd just get up.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's really cool. I didn't know that. That's a really good project, actually. Hopefully you check it out. So you have one that's in the make right now, or you said you're doing sort of a prequel, but you had an original film as well, right?
Well, so we had a film called Aberrance, and that film was at South by Southwest in 2023, and we were in the Midnighters section. It was, South by Southwest was amazing, and just being able to be there was quite an honor, and knowing that your film is going up against Evil Dead Rise, it's like huge film, and so so we had Aberrance, and it was a thriller and a horror movie, and it's kind of like the message is that we're all quietly complicit in allowing the governments of the world to feed off of us. So it's got an interesting message to it, and once we finished making the film and we realized that it was getting the kind of audience and attention that it was, because again, we're talking about connecting cultures, and I feel like it did a really good job of making it clear that although this particular story is happening in Mongolia, it's kind of a story that happens in all countries and all cultures. So we got such a good response from it that we decided we needed to do more than just one film. And so we decided to actually make a prequel, which we're finishing up right now. and the prequel is not going to be a horror. It's actually stepping out of the genre, and the prequel is going to be a western.
Oh,
It's like a western
yeah.
thriller.
Yeah,
So
that's really cool. Why did you decide to go with that instead of like a sequel, for example?
well, so we wanted to create. The idea actually is with film. We wanted to create like a cinematic universe, and we want because it's a world where perhaps maybe the conspiracies that people talk about in this world that are not really true.
Yeah.
The idea is it's kind of like a world where the conspiracies may actually be true.
Mm.
But we felt like in order to make that kind of world interesting and vibrant, you should have content around it that is crosses genre. So you make a western, maybe you could even make like a love story or something like a tragic love story. There could be a lot of different things, and we have a plan to make multiple sequels in multiple languages. So that's in the mix right now.
Oh, that's incredible. So there could be more after the prequel then. You're saying there's
There
for-
should be about 6 more films after the
and features, are you doing all features?
all features.
That's amazing. That's a lot of footage, right? Okay, so you have one that's going to shoot in, this is a separate project, right? That you're shooting in India, is that correct?
Yeah, we got a separate project. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention about Aberrance
Oh, yeah, yeah.
before we move on. So the director of Aberrance was the DP on The Steed, and that was it was really amazing to get to work with him in that capacity because like he came to me, he's like, I want to direct something, I want it to go international. What do we need to do? And I said, we need to do horror. And he's like, I don't like horror.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what do you like? And he's like, well, I like Darren Aronofsky. And I was like, well, I mean, that's close enough. Let's.
Yeah. So the other one you said it's a western, right? The
Yeah.
prequel. So it's horses, right? Are you doing more?
Yeah,
horse
there,
horror?
yeah. It's like that kind of, but it's less about the horses and it's more about just the setting. You know, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
Like you'll have to see it.
Okay.
But you know, it's just a setting that feels like you're in a ghost town somewhere, and so it really feels like a western, but it is modern.
Yeah. Is it still like dystopian? Is that what it is?
Oh, it's the same cinematic universe.
Yeah,
So it's actually about how one of the characters in the first film became who they were.
Okay.
So
It's really interesting. Okay, you have to check it out.
yeah,
And all the other ones that come with it. That's really cool. Okay. And I also wanted to ask, so do you work with the same crew? Because you have a production company right now.
I have a production company.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people that I work with regularly.
Yeah.
But it's not always the same people. When we shoot in Mongolia, we shoot primarily with a Mongolian crew. And it's the same thing, like I'm going to go to India to shoot this other film.
Yeah.
And when we go there, it's going to be an Indian crew.
Yeah.
But we are bringing, so the DP from The Steed and the director from Aberrance is going to come out and be the DP for this film we shoot in India. But aside from him and his crew, and then we're bringing one Mongolian artist to come out and kind of do art direction for the film, but the rest of the crew is going to be Indian.
How do you go about finding the right people when you're moving to another country to do a film like this?
Well, so it's not just that I'm bringing out the Mongolian crew that I've worked with before because I know them.
Yeah.
Mongolia has very challenging environments to shoot in. And where we're going right for this next shoot, we're going to be shooting in a Goan jungle that is, I think it has the highest density of wild tigers in the world. So we're in a tiger-infested jungle with, it's also apparently full of leeches. So we're going to be like covered in leeches and surrounded by tigers. And I was like, I need my Mongolian
Yeah.
tough people
Yeah.
out here working because
Not just like, yeah. That's incredible. But, you know, it makes for great stories, so it's part of the process.
yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to mention the company that I have. It's called Three Flames Pictures because there's 3 of us in it. And Airden Billy Gamble, the director from The Steed, he's one of the founding members. And then Alexa Khan is my partner at the company.
Yeah. And yourself as well. You're the third flame.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm the third flame.
That's
So.
awesome. Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's talk about your India shoot then, okay?
Yeah, okay. So I think it's a really fascinating story, simply because it's one of those things that you barely ever hear about, but it's based on a true story. A huge corporation was getting ready to destroy these 10,000-year-old sacred groves in India, and the jungle dwellers that were there, of course, didn't want that to happen, and they warned the the oligarchs and this corporation, don't come in here. And then what they actually did, the first thing they did, is they went in and tried to kill tigers, because tigers are endangered, and it's one of the few places where they're at. So they figured they could get rid of the tigers. They could. Anyway, these people, they have knowledge of poisons that modern science has never had a chance to actually, categorize. So there's plants and things like that that no one's ever seen before in these sacred groves, and they use the poisons from those plants to basically terrorize these oligarchs, and there was no way for the doctors to fix the problems that were coming from the poisons, and that's when they realized, wow, there's nothing we can do against this, no matter how rich we are. So they effectively saved the forest. So we're making a feature film about that story.
How do you find these stories? Oh my goodness.
I feel like I didn't actually find this. It feels like most of these stories come to me. It's like people know, they look at my background and they're like, well, this guy's done so many bizarre things that like I feel like I can have a conversation with him about it and see. And I feel like I get these great stories, and I'm super grateful for it. I'm grateful to the people who bring them to me. I'm grateful to the universe for for giving me a chance to tell the stories, and that's really what this is all about, is getting a chance to tell stories that should be told and maybe don't always get the attention they deserve.
Where are you in the shooting process for this film? Are you in production?
We're not in production yet. We're going to go into pre-production in August. First, we're going to go to Cannes. And when we go to Cannes, we're going to look and see if we can get a pre-sale for the film. And depending on whether or not we get a pre-sale, that will determine the end budget. But we have some pretty exciting people attached to this. I'm not going to say the names yet until we start production, but I'll definitely let you know when it happens for certain.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, was it documentary or is it?
No, it's a feature film.
It's a feature film.
It's a feature film. No, as a matter of fact, so one of the reasons why we don't want to do a documentary.
Because it could be one.
It could totally be a documentary, but we have to be very careful that we do not cause trouble with the people in the forest.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
They have essentially told us it's okay to make a film that does not directly explain who they are and where they're.
Fiction there,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's like they don't mind if we do that, but I don't want to get on the wrong side of these people.
Yeah. So that's what it allows you for creativity for the future, right?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay, so we'll look out for that. All right. Anything else coming up for you? Is that what your main focus is right now?
I mean, really, I would say that the Indian Project is the major, it's like operative term is the poisoners, but that's not what we're going to call it. But I have a project that I'm going to be working on for about 3 weeks. It starts on Monday, and that's it's going to be a Christmas movie. And sorry, I put something in my throat. I worked on a Hulu Christmas movie a few years ago, and I vowed I wouldn't work on another Christmas movie again after we did it, and here I am.
Here you are.
Stepping into another Christmas movie, but I think this is going to be more fun.
Yeah. They always shoot during the sunny season.
Yeah, I know,
right?
it's crazy. It's like, let's wait until it gets good and hot,
yeah,
so everybody can sweat while they're in front of.
At least it's not July. A lot of films do Christmas movies in July, but okay, that's really incredible. So, do you have a name already for it? Is it?
No, I'm not.
Can't say. We can't say. Okay. So, as I'm coming to a wraps, is there any advice you have for any young filmmakers? You had a route, you started in your 30s, right, with this, but anything you can tell someone that wants to pick up a camera for the first time?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of advice. First off, I would say make sure that when you start doing something, the project that you pick is something that means so much to you that it doesn't matter what you're going to get in return for doing it, because most first projects, although everybody has high hopes, they don't turn out the way you want. You're not going to make the kind of money you think you're going to make, and if it's not looked at in the way that you hoped, at least if you did something that you really cared about, you can kind of sit back and feel good about it. Because I tell people every film that's made is a minor miracle. And even if the film that you made is not what you were hoping it was going to be, you should take a minute and just be like, well, I did make a film, and not very many people can say that. So that's one really big point. And then the other thing I would say, and this is more nuts and bolts, because the film industry has changed. It's completely different than it was 5 years ago. The other thing I would tell people is, do not make a movie and then try and sell it. Very, very bad idea. Everybody wants to make a movie and then try and sell it. Make sure that you at least go out and get the temperature checked for whether or not somebody wants to buy it. Because what you really want to do is you want to figure out the end of the rainbow for your project before you even start it. If you can do that now, it's very possible. It's like the industry is a lot more egalitarian than it used to be. It used to be impossible to talk to decision makers. Now you just have to have some intestinal fortitude, and you just have to go at people and, hey, I really want to talk to you about this project, and if you hear me, hear me out. Let me tell you. So that's what I would say is, try and get at least an idea of what you can sell it for before you try and make it.
Okay, it's really good advice. It's different than what we've heard, so that's really cool. Yeah. Okay, where can we find you on socials and your website for your company?
So on Twitter or X, and on Instagram, it's the same. It's at tmdoyle45. And then it's threeflamepictures.com for the company.
That's awesome. Check it out and check out his works that are coming out and your previous works as well, right? Okay. Anything else? Any closing thoughts?
No, I had a great time. Thank you for this.
Yeah, we had a great time having you. We've never had someone with a background like yours. Everyone is so different, but an archaeologist turned filmmaker. That's incredible. Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone at My TV for watching, and we hope you stay tuned for the next artist. Thank you. They have to get all of them.
Oh, there.
Yeah.